I'm Jon Sicotte, executive editor of the Brewer Magazine. It's the Brewer Magazine video podcast. Thanks for joining us. And I think this is where I have to say, make sure you're liking, subscribing, and doing all that stuff to make sure that you get all of our content as we will be running every week here and on YouTube, Spotify, and on brewermagazine.com. I thought this was a pretty cool idea. We're working on some stories for the upcoming like July, August times of stuff running online. And I'd actually asked some questions, and maybe you got this email. So you're watching this right now and like, oh, I did get that email. But hiring, firing, retention strategies in brewery production. Got some great answers coming back all right via email. But Chris Bell from Call to Arms Brewing in Denver, Colorado, dropped me a line and said, you know what, I got something cool to talk about. And we're actually going to do it as a podcast and talking about, and a lot of this has to do with retention. But at the same time, it's talking about service fees in the industry. It is a hotly debated topic. A lot of people on one side or another. And if you're a business owner, you might be on one side and trying to find ways to be able to understand and justify it, A, to your employees, B, to the public. And so far, Call to Arms has gone through this. And bringing in Chris. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Well, how are you?
Good. And yeah, this is interesting. Like, I'll let you explain exactly everything that you guys are going through about starting service fees to all your tabs, kind of, why you wanted to do it and when you guys start doing it. First off, when did this go into place for you guys? How long have you been doing it now?
Well, we've been thinking about it for a while. Obviously, through all the COVID stuff, we started thinking about compensation for everybody, keeping everybody. And I think a lot of businesses started to do it during then. I thought about it at length, as any brewery who's probably listening has also done the same, and thought about all the ins and outs and positives and negatives. So I did a lot of that last year and decided that we wanted to implement it on the first of this year. So that's what we did.
And do you remember the first time you saw that as a customer somewhere and wanted to know about it and what it actually meant and how that money was being used?
That's actually, I think, the biggest problem with it as a whole is kind of the education piece, so that people who are coming in and purchasing beer understand where it's going, how it's being used. I think that generally it can feel like a cash grab. And so it was really important for us to make sure that it's not that, and to educate all the customers as to why we're doing it. The first time I saw it was at a local brewery here during COVID. And then, I just asked the questions. And they're very transparent. They had signs up saying where it all went, and you ended up feeling good about it by the end of it. I did see it at a restaurant shortly thereafter. Made no sense. It even seemed like the staff wasn't sure how it was being used. And then that leaves you to the point of like, how am I supposed to tip? So going into it, it was all about transparency and education.
Yeah. Well, so you guys, obviously you had some time to think about it. You took some time to get all the pieces in place, and you implemented it. What was the key reason why you did it? And, how is this benefiting your employees?
Well, so talking about retention, that is a big part about it. Bartenders come and go. Typically they have, multiple jobs. They'll work less than 25 hours a week. Scheduling can be difficult with that. And also, transient people, they like to jump around, go on vacation a lot. Try new jobs, new breweries, new bars, which is all reasonable. But we want to get away from that. And we also, benefits have become extremely expensive, but also extremely expensive for just employees to incur, health insurance, namely. So in doing this, we really wanted to find a way that solves all those problems. So we went into it, we started charging the service fee. And in our transparency, we have signs, a QR code that will take you and show you exactly how much it is, how it's being used, and why we're doing it. So we do a 10% service fee. We only charge that on beer, no merchandise, no soda, no popcorn, nothing like that. And the way it works is 100% of those fees go to employee benefit programs. So they get 75% of their healthcare covered. They get a matching 3% IRA. They also get 2 weeks paid vacation and a week paid sick leave. The requirement is that they just have to work 34 hours a week, which makes them full-time. So those benefits, we're trying to make every job here a real job, so to speak. We want them to come here. They want to stay. They feel like they're getting taken care of. They feel like they're not worried or having to save up extra money for a health scare. Or what I've seen a lot with bartending, having done it myself, even is I want to take 10 days to go to Europe. Before those 10 days, I'm working every shift possible to make sure that I make as much money as possible because I get no paid time off. And then when I come back, I'm feeling the same way. We don't want that. We want steady schedules. We want people working reasonable hours and not having to worry about when they get sick, it's paid. When they go on vacation, it's paid. And then we also, with the service fees, also started sharing tips with everybody. So brewers now making significantly more. If somebody wants to work in the back from the bar, they have a real incentive to do that. I've had plenty of bartenders over 9 years say, hey, I'd love to get in the back. And you're like, okay, well, here's the pay rate. They don't have a ton of incentive to do it because they can work half that amount of hours in the, up front and still make more money. So this has really allowed us to do a lot of things. And I hate to just keep talking over you here, but a lot of things. And the big part is that besides taking care of the employees and giving them general flexibility, it really allows them to do multiple things within the brewery, right? And so they can do all these multiple jobs. They keep their job interesting, and they don't get burned out by just being behind the bar 34 hours a week.
Nice. And how have, you kind of put this in place probably, all last fall into winter. What was the discussion with the employees? How did they have a say in where you guys were going to go? And, you probably have some longer termed employees that, you knew that this is who this is for, and that, lean on them for some of this insight, or where, how did you formulate everything?
I formulated the plan, kind of went through the numbers to make sure that we could, make sure that we could cover all those expenses, and not overpromise, right? And so I put a program together and I pitched it to the bartenders and the entire staff for that matter, but in 2 different meetings. And the truth is all of my bartenders left. So they took their time, they found other jobs, and they just respectfully said, this is not how I want to do it, which is totally fine. If, when you're splitting tips, you're making a little bit less per hour. But you also get all those benefits in the paid time off. But you also have to work more hours, right? And some people, might be taking college classes, right? They only want that 20, 25 hours a week. But what we're trying to do here is keep people long-term and have them have, real full-time jobs. And so, that didn't work for most of the employees that were already here. So we hired up heavily in January, and at this point, 6 months in, have 100% retention. But of course, that'll depend over the next couple of years to see how it really pans out. Sure.
Number crunching. Was there, a sticking point in there that you just will this work or not, or did it seem like the numbers came out the way that you thought they would so far?
Yeah. So again, the money is 100% for the employees. So if we are over on a year, then that is dolled out, and it is them who get to choose how they want it dolled out, right? So they can take bonuses, they can take pay increases going into the next year just on their hourly. They can say, instead of CTA covering 75% of my healthcare, I want them to cover 100%. We will give the options based on what's left over at the end of the year, and they can collectively decide how they want that money to be used. The reason we started at such a high service fee is that I really, again, wanted to make sure that we were going to deliver on what we were promising employees. I wasn't about to hire in a whole bunch of new staff and then have to be like, hey, guys, as it turns out, we can't cover everything we promised. The other side about going high is that we can always come down, right? So 10% is a lot. That is not like something to scoff at. However, based on looking at it through the first half of the year and discussing this with employees, we feel like we're going to be able to decrease it to as low as 6% and still have a little bit of surplus. Now, that's great, right? Because if we're decreasing it, essentially we're decreasing prices, and that feels good, but we're still allowing all the benefits to employees. So we have a meeting on July 6th, I believe, and that will be where all the employees get together. We talk about what the surplus is, how we want it to be used, and part of it too about decreasing service fees is that it has the potential to increase tips. If somebody walks in and the price is too high, they might be tipping 15% over 18 or 20. So there's a potential to also bring in more tips. So that'll be, it's very democratic. It's not my money, so it'll be up to them as to how we want to approach it.
Nice. And another question just about on the employee side, and what you wrote to me, saying that some employees, they all are in on this right now. That is there anyone that isn't tip sharing and working, just as a salary per hour?
Yep, you're allowed to do that. If you want to opt into that, that is totally fine. Those employees still receive the benefits, right? Because that 10% service fee is to pay for benefits. So that goes to every single employee, whether you're opting into salary or not. There is a potential that salary is less than what everybody makes on the year because of the tip pool. There's potential it's more or less. It's just hard to say on how the year will go. But there are also people that, have kids. They have childcare they need to pay for every single month, and they want steady paychecks. January is the slowest month of the year. Childcare is expensive. They may not want to wait for, June or December or September, our busiest months, to make up that difference. So yeah, that is totally allowable.
Nice. And on the, the educational side, not just the employees, but to the people that are buying the beer for you, how are your customers taking to it? Have you heard positives or negatives, and how have you remedied those when talking to people, and who's having that conversation?
It's typically the staff. Again, we try to be as transparent as possible. We wanted people to really understand where the money is going. So anytime people have said, hey, this tab feels high, just say, hey, look, there's a 10% service fee. All of it goes to benefits. Every time that's happened, they're like, oh, that's cool. Because, they're paying into something that's helping out, general employees. So it's hard for them to feel like, oh, okay. They're not just like slyly increasing their prices, right? Which could be the case. So then the next question always becomes, well, should I tip 20%? And so the answer to that is really, it's up to you. That also, those tips go into a pool and they compensate all of our employees. But if you feel like you can't afford it, we respect that. We haven't seen a serious decrease in tips so far as I can tell year over year. It's hard to say because, some events or private events, it's all kind of wonky. You can't just calculate 18% of your gross. So we've only heard twice, that I've been told about verbally from people that were not a fan of it. And, again, all you can do is explain what we're trying to do and why we're doing it. And if they don't like it, that's their prerogative, But there has not been nearly enough negative feedback to feel like we made the wrong decision at all. And my employees feel safer in their job, Anytime I've done an interview like this, I always say, hey, go do an interview with one of my employees and do it on an anonymous basis, And the feedback from them to me has been extremely positive. So I hope that keeps going, and I hope they respect that we're doing this for good reasons, and I hope that the customers feel the same way. The negative responses, the one, there just wasn't any getting through to him. The second one left us a Google review, so reached out to him, and he reached back out, which is typically not the case. If you get a negative review on Google, you say, hey, look, I'd love to chat with you more, help me out. How can we be better? Very respectful guy, wrote back to me. I wrote back to him. We went back and forth. He said, look, I just can't afford to drink there anymore. So that's a real shame. Why don't you come in for one more beer? I'll give you a $25 gift card. You can use it however you see fit. And then I never heard back from him. So I'm not sure if it's one of those people who just likes to leave negative reviews, but, tried to make that as right as I could.
Wait, people do that? There's negative reviews on the internet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
It's pretty neat what you guys are doing there, and it seems like a positive experience so far. How was it in hiring people at that time and explaining to them, this is what you're going to be doing? This isn't the standard thought process, at least our generation that grew up going to bars and breweries. That's not exactly how it was. Usually there might have been one long-time bartender, but it's usually a rotating cast of characters. You're looking to have more of a solid stable. And you could hire less people in the grand scheme of things this way, right? Because you're having to cover man hours in a different way. Yeah, totally. Exactly. So we have less staff, but just more hours. So that's less, that helps me too, right? That's less HR, less management, less annual reviews.
the financial benefit to the brewery is zilch, right? Because again, that money is going to all of the employees. But it's very helpful. It makes it very easy to schedule, right? Because you're essentially scheduling for a Monday through Friday. You're like, hey, these are the hours you're working, these are the days you're working, and then there's some flux just with events and what have you. And then we have 2 part-time bartenders that don't receive those benefits. But that's just because they're part-timers. They come in and help us for, anniversary parties or our bigger event months, stuff like that. And it's worked out fine. The other thing about Denver, at least in Denver, is there's a minimum wage and then there's a tipped minimum wage. If you pool tips with people that do not work behind the bar, then you have to pay the real minimum wage and not the tipped. And the tipped is much lower. So even before tips, everybody's rate went up $3.02 an hour. Then plus the tips, then plus the service fee for the benefits. So when you roll out a total compensation package for an employee, it's significantly more than what they would have experienced otherwise, especially for anybody in the back of the house. I mean, I've been a brewer for 16 years professionally, and there's not a lot of money back there. It's a labor of love for sure. And so this gives an opportunity for them to, want to stick around too, because they're like, hey, I'm being compensated, I got benefits, and I enjoy my job, hopefully.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you seen or crunched any of those numbers to see if people are spending, on the more money or less money? Have you seen any of that correlation since you guys have been?
It's just impossible to say the correlation there, right? So like January was incredibly slow, like slower than last year. And of course that makes you nervous because that's when you implemented the policy, right? We had really bad weather. The dry January thing has picked up a lot. And so I chalk it up to that. We're still up 2% on the year. Ticket sales are about the same. So I would say we haven't really seen an impact. But, the other question is like, could we be doing better, right? Should we be up 8 or 10%? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say either way. Like we could put out, a poll to people to see how they're feeling about it. I don't know how many people will fill that out, but
right.
But yeah, so it's hard to say. It certainly could be the case that, more people in here are spending more money, but there's really just no way to prove that out. So.
Yeah. And how about just thinking of this other thing, now that you have some people that you feel will be more a part of the team full on in, you feel like you can invest even other things, educational programs to them, making them, better educated, Cicerone type training. Is that another thing that you see as a benefit? You're able to give these people a little more. I'm sure you did even with the former employees, but like being able to like have that education aspect and investing more into them even on other ways. Is that something that is a benefit out of this as well?
Absolutely. And I mean, ultimately that would come down to what they want to do with any additional fees. If they're all like, we do beer education here, we do spike training here, so we'll do all the off flavor training. But if they wanted to be a Cicerone and people agreed with that as a value to them, yeah, we would definitely do that. In the past, we used to offer it and just say, if you can pass the test, I'll reimburse you. That's only happened once in 9 years, but all of that is up, for them to decide on what they want to do. Really, the value I see from an educational standpoint for what we're doing, the way we're doing it, is again for people to work in the back. I think one, it just gives them a real respect for what it takes, and also just a better understanding of the process as a whole, right? So when they're customer facing at the bar and they've run 2 package days and been in there for a tank cleaning, or they now are trained on cake cleaning, et cetera, they really have a different respect and understanding. And they can also just explain to customers in a better, more educated light on how this stuff goes and what it takes to make beer. So yeah, that has been incredibly valuable, I think. And again, I think it keeps it interesting. Like burnout for bartenders is real. It's very real. If somebody is actually working 35, 40 hours a week behind the bar and it's our busiest month, like that can get incredibly exhausting, right? And if it gets exhausting, guess what? They're probably not cleaning or opening as well as they should be. Or being as engaging when they're customer facing because they're tired, right? But if they're running, 26 hours behind the bar, and then they got 8 hours to do other stuff, like right now I have one of the bartenders, she's doing all the admin work for the front of house. So that means all the ordering, all the inventory, all the scheduling. I have another one who's like really interested in doing merch development. I am terrible at that. She's been great at it. She can clock in, do that, still make the same rate that she'd be making behind the bar, still have her benefits. So it diversifies what they're doing. It allows them to learn and do different things. And they can potentially find a passion here that they didn't even know that they had before. And yet they're still being compensated appropriately. Social media, events, you name it. Nobody wants to just sit here and check IDs all day for $14 an hour, right? But if they're making that 18, 27 plus their tips, yeah, I'll sit down and check some IDs, but it mixes it up. So
nice. And that was going to be my final question, was any shining stars out of this so far? People, and you kind of brought some people up already. So it seems like they are liking being able to do other aspects as well and be a part of the company in different avenues.
I mean, there isn't a single one of them that isn't a shining star, really. They're all fantastic. And again, another big thing about it is it creates a better team atmosphere. Because everybody's playing a different role, and everybody has respect that somebody did this to get you to here. And I just think it creates less resentment, or like if, we had an event person or a taproom manager that was doing admin work, off site for 2 days, and then the bartenders feel like they're not being supported or there's somebody not here. Like that sort of stuff doesn't happen, right? Everybody understands. They see everybody knows how to work behind the bar. Everybody knows how to, do a piece of something else that they realize is important to keeping the whole place running. And so I think it just creates this general environment of mutual respect between all the employees and what they're trying to do as a team, right? Because everybody has the incentive for the tap room to do better. Everybody, including the bartender, right? Or including the brewer, right? So I have 2 brewers, but one of them's here on Saturdays. You think he hasn't jumped out on the bar on a busy Saturday? He definitely has. And he's feeling great about it because the day's busy. They need some help. Do they then feel better supported, right? It's just a better team atmosphere as a whole.
Anything fun happening this year you guys got lined up as we wrap things up? Yeah,
for sure. We've kind of changed the whole model. Events were always big for us. And we did a lot of 1 or 2 day events, the anniversary party deal, let's call it, St. Patty's, whatever, that kind of stuff, right? Or 1 day for Oktoberfest, all those kinds of days. But coming out of COVID, I was like, we have to flip it on its head and we're going to try something totally different. So we ran into the first Christmas, which was 22. And I'm from New York City. And, there's a Christmas bar down there downtown that we used to go to as kids, and it was just crazy. So I was like, we're going to deck out the brewery like that. And it set every record that could ever be broken for that month. And then we set them all again last year. So that's been huge, and we'll do it again this year. And then we do Pride Month is the same thing, and all month long events every weekend. And then we do Halloween as well, full month, completely deck out the brewery. And then the new one that we're adding this year is 3 full weeks of Oktoberfest. And that one is the one I'm most excited for this year. But yeah. So. And then 9th anniversary.
And the 9th, yeah. Well, thanks for talking about this. I think it was some good insights, pretty enlightening. Hopefully people kind of, see this, hear this, and understand that it is a route that, I think can benefit a company. No matter, there may be some bumps along the road to get there, but I think it is something that's important to have that discussion with and start looking into it.
Yeah, I think that the monetary portion of it is usually what gets wonky to both customers and employees. But if you're saying, hey, all this money is going to employees, I just don't see how that could be a negative thing for anybody.
Right.
So that's why we feel really good about it. And I would encourage anybody, who's listening or watching to reach out if they've got other questions. I think this is where the industry is going. And frankly, the more we normalize it, the more people will understand it. So, we only have one product, right? Beer. And we can only mark that up so much. And if I have to keep marking that up, we'll eventually price ourselves out. But with a service fee and adding benefits to our employees, it makes us a better company to work for. So,
sure thing. Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the time, John.
Don't forget, you can always check on brewermag.com. You can also see us on YouTube and listen to us on Spotify. And don't forget daily updates on Facebook, Instagram, and X. I'm Executive Editor Jon Sicotte for brewermagazine.com.